Mel, predictably, was a major source of friction. "What's this I hear about you being a regular chanteuse?" Now he grumbled, using the French word like an insult. "Don't expect me to cover your shifts just because you were up all night being a superstar." His annoyance was a thin veil for a complicated mix of emotions, a genuine worry that she would burn out, and a territorial fear that her new life would pull her away from the diner for good. The first few gigs were a nerve-wracking success. Vera and Jolene were there every Thursday, sitting at a front table, their faces beaming with pride. Henry and a few of the other regulars even made a field trip one night, looking wonderfully out of place as they ordered beers and applauded with wild enthusiasm. Alice felt a sense of fulfillment she hadn't realized she was missing. But the novelty soon wore off, replaced by sheer bone-deep exhaustion. One Thursday, after a brutal double shift at the diner, her performance was flat. She was tired, her voice was strained, and she forgot the lyrics to the second verse of her closing number. The applause was sparse and polite. The crowd, small to begin with, seemed indifferent. Brenda said nothing afterwards, which was somehow worse than a direct criticism. Alice drove home that night feeling utterly defeated. The doubt she had kept at bay came rushing back in a tidal wave. Who was she kidding? She was a middle-aged waitress with a nice voice playing dress-up in a world she didn't belong in. The dream which had seemed so bright and attainable now felt foolish and exhausting. The next morning at the diner, she was quiet and withdrawn. Mel's usual complaints about the weakness of the coffee felt like personal attacks. By lunchtime, she had made her decision. That evening, she walked into the Blue Cactus before it opened and found Brenda in her office, poring over receipts. "I can't do this anymore," Alice said the words, tumbling out before she could lose her nerve. "I'm too tired, I'm not good enough, and I need to be realistic. I'm quitting." Brenda leaned back in her chair, studying Alice for a long moment. "I've had a lot of singers on that stage," she said, finally, her gravelly voice surprisingly gentle. Young girls with perfect pitch and big ambitions. Polished, professional, and completely forgettable. They sing from their throat. You sing from your gut. She stood up and walked over to the bar. "I didn't hire you because I thought you were the next big thing, Alice. I hired you because when you sing, people feel it. They hear the long shifts, the heartache, the hope. They hear a real life. That's a rare thing." She turned to face her. "Don't quit because you had one bad night. Don't quit because you're tired. The only reason to quit is if you don't love it anymore. Do you?" The question hung in the air, simple and profound. Did she still love it? Alice thought of the feeling she got when she hit a note just right when the music swelled around her, when a story of love and loss came to life in a song. Yes, she realized with a surge of clarity, she loved it. It was the fear she hated, the fear of not being good enough, the fear of failure. "No," Alice said, her voice stronger now. "I still love it." Good, Brenda nodded. "Then stop feeling sorry for yourself and get ready for your set tomorrow night. And try not to forget the words this time." That next Thursday, something was different. Alice walked onto the stage, not with the anxious energy of an amateur seeking approval, but with the quiet confidence of an artist. She wasn't there to impress anyone. She was there to share a part of herself. She had a weekly phone call with Tommy earlier that day, and hearing about his adventures navigating the thrilling, terrifying landscape of New York had filled her with a renewed sense of courage. If he could do it, so could she. She sang a song she hadn't planned on a simple folk ballad about finding beauty in imperfection. Her voice, rich with emotion and experience, captivated the room. The audience was silent, leaning in, not just listening to the music, but feeling the story behind it. When she finished, the applause was thunderous. She didn't become a star that night. She still had to get up the next morning for an early shift at the diner. But she had found her place. She had found a balance between the life she had and the life she wanted, realizing they didn't have to be separate things. They were all just different verses of the same beautiful, complicated song. As she took her final bow, bathed in the warm glow of the single spotlight, she was no longer just a waitress who could sing. She was a singer. And it was just the beginning of her second act. Chapter 12, The Man in Booth 4. In the wake of Alice's quiet success at the Blue Cactus, a new kind of normal settled over the diner. It was a life of dualities, the greasy spoon by day, the blues lounge by night. The rhythm was exhausting but exhilarating, and for the first time in a long time, Alice felt as though all the disparate parts of her life were harmonizing. The Diner family had weathered every kind of storm, internal, external, emotional, and even robotic. They felt settled, a seasoned crew who believed they had seen it all. They were wrong. The mystery arrived not with a bang, but with the soft clink of a coffee cup being placed on a saucer. He started coming in on a Monday. He was an older gentleman, probably in his late 70s, with a neatly trimmed gray beard, sad eyes, and a tweed jacket that had seen better decades. He chose booth 4, the one in the corner with a slight wobble that Mel never got around to fixing, and that became his spot. Every morning, Monday through Friday, at precisely 9 o'clock, he would slide into the booth, place a folded newspaper on the table, and order the exact same thing, black coffee, please, and a side of dry wheat toast. He was polite, but impenetrably private. He never made small talk. He read his paper, drank his coffee, ate his toast, left a generous tip, and departed at 9:45. The staff, in their tradition of diner nomenclature, christened him Mr. Booth 4. He was a quiet, unassuming fixture, a man who seemed to want nothing more than to be left alone. But the diner was a place of stories, and his silence was a story waiting to be read. Vera was the first to notice the cracks in his stoic facade. "I saw him crying today," she whispered to Alice, her face clouded with concern, just for a second. "He was hiding behind his newspaper, but I saw him wipe his eyes." Jolene, ever the observer, noticed something else. "He's not just reading that paper," she noted a few days later. "He's watching the door. Every time the bell chimes, he looks up just for a second, like he's hoping to see someone, or hoping not to." The mystery deepened on a Thursday. In his quiet departure, Mr. Booth 4 accidentally left something behind, tucked into the crease of the vinyl seat. Alice found it while wiping down the table. It was a small black and white photograph, its edges soft with age. It showed a young woman with a radiant, joyful smile and bright, intelligent eyes standing in front of what looked like an old-fashioned carousel. The photo felt intensely personal, a tangible piece of a long-ago happiness. Alice slipped it into her apron pocket, deciding it was too precious for the cigar box of lost keys and single earrings they kept behind the counter. She would return it to him tomorrow. But the next morning, before Mr. Booth 4 arrived for his coffee, a different kind of visitor appeared. He was a man in a sharply tailored suit that looked conspicuously expensive for a Friday morning at Mel's. He had slicked back hair, a predatory smile, and a demeanor that set every one of the waitress's teeth on edge. "Good morning, ladies," he said, his eyes scanning the diner. "I'm looking for my uncle, Arthur Pendleton, an older gentleman, gray beard. Tends to frequent this establishment." Alice, Jolene, and Vera exchanged a quick, silent glance. Arthur, so Mr. Booth 4 had a name. "He sometimes gets a little confused, wanders off." The man continued, his tone a poor imitation of concern. "We're all very worried about him. I was wondering if you'd seen him today, or if perhaps he might have left anything behind. His gaze was a little too sharp, a little too focused." Jolene leaned against the counter, her arms crossed. "Can't say that we have. Lots of old guys with beards come in here. Anything else we can help you with?" The man's smile tightened. "I'll just wait then." He's a creature of habit. He took a seat at the counter, a shark in a sea of friendly guppies, and ordered a coffee he never touched. The waitress's protective instincts, honed by years of dealing with every kind of trouble that could walk through a diner door, went on high alert. Something was profoundly wrong. Later that evening, after a tense day of serving around the silent, watchful nephew who finally left after Arthur never showed, Alice went to see Elliot. She laid the photograph on his kitchen table and recounted the week's events: the quiet, sad man, the strange, unnerving relative, the feeling that they were caught in the middle of a story they didn't understand. "I know it's not much to go on," she said, "but my gut is screaming that this Arthur is in some kind of trouble, and that guy is the source of it." Elliot, who had learned long ago to trust Alice's intuition, picked up the photograph. "I'll look into it, Alice. Unofficially, I can run the name Arthur Pendleton, see if anything pops up. And I'll check out your nephew, too." The diner staff turned into a team of amateur sleuths. Vera, with her disarming sweetness, tried to gently engage Arthur in conversation when he returned the following Monday, asking him about the weather, the news, anything to draw him out. He remained polite, but distant, his sadness a palpable shield. Jolene took to watching the street from the diner window, confirming that the man in the suit was often parked across the way, observing them. Even Mel got involved, grumbling that the spook in the suit was taking up a parking spot that a paying customer could use his territorial nature overriding his desire not to get involved. The answer, when Elliot finally delivered it, was more poignant than any of them could have imagined. Arthur Pendleton is a retired professor of American history from ASU. Elliot explained to Alice over the phone. Impeccable record, quiet life. The woman in the photograph is his late wife, Eleanor. She passed away just over a year ago from a sudden illness. He paused. I dug a little deeper. Turns out this diner was where they had their first date back in 1968. He's not just coming for the coffee, Alice. He's coming to remember her. Oh, Elliot Alice breathed her heart aching for the quiet man in the corner booth. As for your other guy, Elliot continued, his voice hardening. His name is Marcus Thorne. He's not a relative. He's a notoriously aggressive real estate developer. Seems Professor Pendleton lives in a historic home in a neighborhood Thorne is trying to redevelop. Arthur has refused to sell. Thorne has been using a campaign of harassment and intimidation to try and force the old man out. The final pieces of the puzzle clicked into place. Thorne wasn't a concerned nephew. He was a vulture circling a grieving man, hoping to exploit his vulnerability. The confrontation happened the next day. Thorne, his patience gone, strode into the diner while Arthur was quietly reading his paper. He slid into the opposite side of booth 4, his presence, an immediate violation of the sacred space. Arthur, we need to talk, Thorne said, his voice low and menacing as he slid a sheaf of papers across the table. This is my final offer. It's more than generous. Sign it, and I'll be out of your life. Arthur looked up, his face pale. I've told you, Mr. Thorne, the house is not for sale. It was my wife's home. Your wife is gone, Thorne said coldly. It's just a house, a big empty house for a lonely old man. Sign the papers. Before Alice could even move, a loud clang echoed through the diner. Mel had slapped his heavy steel spatula down on the grill with a deafening crack. He walked out from behind the counter, wiping his hands on his apron, his face a thunderous mask. That's enough, Mel said, his voice a low rumble. This is a place of business, and this gentleman is my customer. I think it's time for you to leave. Thorne scoffed. This is a private conversation. Not anymore, it ain't. Jolene said, appearing at Mel's side. Henry and 2 other regulars stood up from their stools, creating a silent, unmoving wall of solidarity. The air was thick with unspoken menace. Thorne looked from face to determined face, realizing he wasn't just dealing with a sad old man, he was dealing with a family. He snatched his papers off the table, shot Arthur a look of pure venom, and stalked out of the diner. Later, after the tension had subsided, Alice walked over to booth 4. She quietly placed the black and white photograph on the table in front of Arthur. He looked at it, then up at her, his sad eyes filled with a dawning understanding and immense gratitude. Eleanor, he whispered, picking up the photo. She loved this place. She said the coffee was terrible, but the people were first-rate. For the first time, a small, genuine smile touched his lips. He finally began to talk, sharing stories of his vibrant, funny wife, their life together, and the diner that had been the backdrop to their beginning. Arthur Pendleton still came to the diner every morning at 9. He still sat in booth 4 and ordered black coffee and dry wheat toast. But he was no longer a mystery. He was Arthur. And now when the bell above the door chimed, he would look up and offer a quiet smile. He wasn't just coming to remember a ghost anymore. He was coming to have coffee with his friends.